Hi, my name is Jane Gottschalk. I was born at the Kanaknak Hospital, and in 1950. Um, my parents were Wasley and Salsa Tukmalra, and um, my mother's other name was, some people called her Sally, but in my birth record, that's what her name is, Salsa Tukmalra. And they had a homestead in Togiak Lake. They had the winter home was further upstream and the summer home was downstream, which was more accessible for their subsistence for the winter food and supply. My father was a reindeer herder and had 100 reindeer. We still have an old pirate large green chest that is about 3 feet, 2 feet or 3 feet by 2, 3 feet, and on this old historical chest are marks that my father used to count his reindeer. He also had a knack for gold and had a staked gold mining prospect place, and he filed for that with the Dillingham Court back in the 1940s. And also is it's also recorded in BLM records now, which is in the Togiak Life Refugee. He gold mined to support his family besides trapping and commercial fishing, and he had a sailboat. I remember when I was a little girl, he was always in great thought when he took his afternoon nap in our old green Queen Anne style couch. He would tell me, I wish I could go back and get that gold. You would never have to pay for anything in the store for the rest of your life. As he got older, as he got into his old age, he still talked about going back, but back then, no one really paid attention when he wanted someone to go back to get that gold. He was also a sailboat fisherman. Although he was not fluent in English, he had a wealth of knowledge in subsistence and taking care of his family. My father had 7 other siblings, 6 brothers and 1 sister. The 2 siblings had the bluest eyes. My father was Russian descent. Some of my fondest memories were the family nights. All the grandchildren would come over to the family house and gather in the living room to tell stories with his oldest nephew, George, walked by his side. To this date, he has a total of 150 or more grandchildren and great-grandchildren. My mother, Sasa, parenthesis Sally, was also from the Togiak area. My parents had a total of 13 children. They had 9 girls and 4 boys, my oldest brothers being twins. My mother and dad had 8 girls before the twin brothers were born. My mother, from what I hear, taught my sisters about cleanliness, washing clothes, and subsistence at a very young age. My oldest sister, now deceased, used to tell me that my mom made the girls start washing clothes, including bedding, when they were very young, and taught them subsistence and survival. I was grateful that she taught my sisters at an early age because she passed away when she was about 49 years old, when I was just 5 years old. When she passed, my sisters were just starting their young families, but I'm grateful they learned so young because they were able to take care of our very elderly father who was in his 90s when he passed. Life was very difficult without the parents for everyone. When there is some struggle going on with relatives, I always mention life would have been different and better for all of us if God would have spared her life until we were much older to take care of ourselves. It was especially hard on me and my two of my older brothers. My parents migrated in 1945 and purchased a $2,000 home from Mike Moran. In today's prices, that would have computed to $200,000 home. It was a very big 3-story home with an additional attic. My mother was a home decor person and had a lot of old brand dinnerware and casserole dishes, and I have one of her casserole dishes. And the bottom where it sits was a silver. We also had a tall music player, probably a 1930s or 40s music player that she bought for one of my older sister's birthday. The reason they relocated to Dillingham and Aleknagik was to meet my oldest sister's physical and medical needs. My sister was sent to Tacoma, Washington by the Okanaknock Hospital, and there she received her medical needs and was able to walk again. She spent 3 to 4 years in Tacoma and came home in 1955. Shortly after, our mother passed away in Seward, Alaska Hospital Sanitarium for those with tuberculosis. She was there from 1953 to 55 or 56 and was buried there as my father did not have any funds to bring her home. It was a great loss for my father and her family. Some stories that my older sisters used to tell me was that she was a great mother and she took in our relatives that were orphaned. And she always had feasts for everyone, and that is why I have sisters and a cousin that always brought in guests and families that needed to overnight and always prepared feasts for visitors during church rallies and meetings. My sister said I tried to carry our mother's tradition of feeding people and said our mother always stressed the importance of especially helping the orphans, making sure they were not hungry. We also had some other things happening in our family. I know that we had one sister that was also in a sanatorium, or I can't remember, but it was down in Washington also for mental illness. So my family went through a lot, losing our mother very young, and then our father passed away in 1966 of February 24. And so I always stress to people that it's really important to respect your parents while you're young, even if you get older, because it's really hard. We went through hardship without our mother. And then, from because the mothers are the matriarchs of our families, they're the providers, and they support the kids and everything. And so all that happened. I remember when I was a little girl, I was about 5 years old. I know that I had a brother-in-law that was a photographer. He had a lot of photos of our families way back in the 40s. And he was the photographer, and he was also the messenger back then when they just had telegraphs. Anyways, telegraphs or telegrams, but he used to bring all the news to us. He'd come over to the family house and would tell us. He's the one that told us that our mother had passed away. And all the news telegraphs used to come, I think, to the old post office on South Shore that Mabel Smith used to run. She used to run the post office. I remember my dad and I went when I was a little girl. I remember we went across to the post office, and it was in this old log cabin. And inside they had a really big, tall swing, and I remember seeing a child swinging there. And I think it might have been Ernest Ford, because Dorothy Ford, our teacher, had a son named Ernest, so I think he's the one that was swinging in that big, tall cabin they had. But yeah, that's how my family moved over to Aleknagik. And I've been living here for off and on because I had to go attend a boarding school. I went to a children's home up in Queethlook when I was about 10 years old. And I spent like 3 years up there. And then I came home, and then when my father became ill with cancer, they sent me home. Actually, I wrote letters to police to send for me, so I was able to come home. And as soon as I got home, I went to the grade school over here until he passed away. And then I also went to the mission school, Aleknagik Mission School. That's where a lot of kids came from different parts of Alaska, all the way up to Nome and Gamble, Alaska. Lots of students came down there, even from down the chain. And I have a lot of memories of the mission school because I spent my summers there, probably 3 summers there. My dad used to drop me off towards the end of May, and he'd be gone for like 3 months working in the cannery in Dillingham. So, and then when he came back in August, then he'd come and pick me up. But that was my life as a child. I'm just thankful. That my parents, moved over this way. Although I have lots of relatives from Togiak, we have relatives all over, even up in Noostu. But and then I'm grateful that I had my father, at least, because he taught us to be kind to others and to be forgiving, and that's how we're supposed to live our lives. So even if he didn't have education, he was really a fast learner. I just wanted to tell this story how my parents migrated over. Our elders are starting to pass, and I'm glad you're doing this so we could preserve our stories.